will be given to all the each of the presenters, and subsequently we'll have a discussion at the end for whatever time we will have. So as the first presenter is not available, we can start from the second presenter, and Sheema Kermani is the second presenter, and she is hailing from Karachi, Pakistan. So we have very interesting panel here from kind of representing different parts of the world. And she is a renowned classical dancer, choreographer, and theater practitioner. She is doing her PhD and has multiple degrees. She from University of Karachi and other schools, and she is very well-known personality, and she is going to share her views on Indian classical dance beyond border with a special reference to Pakistan. And ma'am, you have some 20 minutes for presentation, and then we'll be kind of shift to the next presenter. So over to you, ma'am, Sheema Kermani.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. And so I'm looking at the time. It's in my city, it's 10 past 10. So I will go on till 10:30, right? 20 minutes. Your time is half an hour ahead. Okay. So thank you. I would like to start by sharing two beautiful quotations with all of you. The first one by the very famous Bhakti poet and saint from Varanasi, Kabir Das. And he says, Gagan hamara gaon, meaning the whole universe is my home. And the second one is from Haji Sayyid Waris Ali Shah, a Sufi saint from Deva, Barabanki, UP, from where I hail. And he says, distance does not count in love. If you love me, I'm with you, even if you're thousands of miles away. Now, keeping these two sayings in mind, I move forward by saying that as I was growing up, I understood that for both my parents, the distance from the land where they were born to the land that they had migrated to was not to be counted. Their hearts lived in their land. For my father, it was Barabanki, UP, the erstwhile province of Awadh, while for my mother, it was Hyderabad, Deccan. Their childhood and their past, they continued to cherish and carried the memories with them as essential part of their being. They had strong roots in the soil they had grown up in, the soil where our ancestors have been buried for the past 600 years or more. My parents got married in 1942. My presentation is my personal journey for my roots and how I have connected my present work and my art to my history, to my cultural roots, and which will lie in these areas that I'm talking about, which was known as the subcontinent of India. My parents got married in 1948 in India, a year after the tragedy of the partition of the subcontinent, a tragedy that affected the lives of millions of people who witnessed horrendous violence. Families separated, torn apart, displacements, deaths, rape, loot, murder, and the refugee problem, which continues more so in Pakistan than in India. 1948 is also the year when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was established by the United Nations. An important aspect of this declaration is the recognition of cultural rights, respecting multiculturalism, syncretism, and respect for all cultural identities. Me and my two siblings were born in Pakistan. It is in Pakistan that my parents are buried, but for them, from Lucknow and Hyderabad, Deccan to Karachi, where they lived for most of their lives, where they are died, and where they are buried, the distance did not count. However, my journey as an artist has been intertwined with my search for a cultural identity. I believe that for an artist to evolve, to be creative, to be able to, the artist must be linked with and be deeply rooted and in sync with one's cultural history, with the heritage, because it is culture that forges our identities. I grew up in Karachi, which was a cosmopolitan city. It was multilingual, multi-dominational, multi-racial, a city that I cherish the fact that we had great many languages, many religious denominations, literatures, traditions of music and dance, and a great many distinct cultural traditions within us. Many different communities and groups used to live here. Marriages between these groups were common, as were between the different sects of the Muslims also. Religious and cultural practices tended to accommodate a wide spectrum of customs and traditions. Given that my family came from a beautiful mix of the Ganga Jamni culture, our home was totally secular. Thus, we could celebrate the ancient Zoroastrian, Persian Nowruz, our New Year, as well as Diwali, Muharram, and all the other festivals respectfully. Music, jewelry, bright colors, and all celebrations were stewed during the month of mourning and happiness and joy. We also celebrated Christmas and Easter, and something very comforting and deeply humane about a country that is homogeneous. When I was studying in Karachi, I had Parsi students, Hindu students, Christian girls, even a Jewish boy was with us in school. So sadly, at that point, we grew up in great cultural diversity. But soon after Pakistan came into being, there was a conscious bid to avoid any mention of Indian or Hindu influences. Officially, it was decided that our society is to be protected from Indian or Hindu influences. In reality, the lives of our ordinary people are inundated with popular culture of India, as expressed in their movies and Bollywood films and songs and pop music, etc., which everyone in Pakistan watches. So, the search for a cultural identity that started from the beginnings of Pakistan, here Pakistan started looking down upon the art of dance. There was something that they thought was very suspicious and unacceptable in what was called the classical dance of India. It has continuously been claimed by official authorities that dance is not part of Pakistani culture. The reason for this being that dance has been an essential part of the life and traditions and culture of the subcontinent, and Pakistan felt that they have to create or have a separate and a new culture. Now, what was this new culture and where was it going to come about from? The challenge of forming a new modern state with a new national identity, a new culture, all this is faced by lots of post-colonial countries. I'd like to remind you that in Shame, a novel written by Salman Rushdie, he captures this challenge very well by saying that I must tell you what things were like in those early days after partition. The city's old inhabitants, who had become used to living in a land older than time, had been given a bad shock by independence, by being told to think of themselves as well as the country itself as new. Well, their imagination simply wasn't up to the job. You can understand that. So it was the ones who were really new, the distant cousins and half acquaintances and total strangers who had poured in from the east to settle in this land of God, who took over and got things going. The newness of those early days felt pretty unstable. It was dislocated, rootless. So the state started defining this newness, and paradoxically, they saw it as not Indian because they wanted to emphasize the Muslimness of this new identity. So thus created a dilemma of sifting through a plural history. The state superficially resolved the tension between a complex and plural history of a land which was older than time and its new identity by turning to the ambiguous and uncertain rhetoric of Islam. And Aisha Jalal in her book says, there has always been an interesting correlation between the emphasis given to the unifying principles of Islam and the anxieties about illegitimacy and legitimacy. The state managers could not expect to legitimize authority without at least appearing to serve the interests of society as a whole. And now, in recent years, the rise of religious fundamentalism, increasingly monolithic notions of culture and identity, and purist views of the interrelationships of diverse cultures have taken hold. Those of us who come with an understanding that cultural mixing and syncretism, or the blending, combining, and merging of various cultural elements, representations, and meanings are the basis of a dynamic human culture, find it increasingly hard to cope with the theory of a single monolithic cultural narrative, because we believe that our cultural lives and our basic human rights are all connected. I have always been amazed. I have always believed that it is not religion alone that creates different cultures. And I'm amazed to discover the various elements that become part of traditions and culture. Here in Pakistan, one is sort of, for the last so many years, one has been told that dance is not part of Pakistani culture, that it is part of Indian culture. So, by calling it Indian culture, they obviously imply that it is part of Hindu life and not Muslim life. Therefore, dance still remains a taboo subject in Pakistan. The division of culture on the basis of religion has been totally unacceptable to me. I became a Indian classical dancer and a theatre practitioner in this environment. And I realized that to belong to a field of activity which has no place in society you live in, no encouragement, no history, and very little future is a singular misfortune. There are no traditions to follow, no gurus to learn from, no standards to aspire to. And so I got a scholarship from ICCR, the Indian Council of Cultural Relations, and I went to India to study dance further. And when I came back, I still heard these comments, oh, but this is not Pakistani, this is Indian. Now, and then the most important argument that I had to counter was, no, dance is not from Pakistan. There is nothing in Pakistani culture that you can call dance. So, to counter this argument that dance is not in our culture, I created a dance drama, a ballet. Can I show some of the slides now, sir? Is it possible to add some of the PowerPoints here? Anyway, so I created this dance drama called The Song of Mohenjo-daro, which traces the roots of dance to the culture that existed in the Indus Valley civilization, 2500 BC. Mr. Pranav, if I can add the PowerPoint presentation here, can you run that along? Yeah. Can you do that, or should I share it? You want me to share it? Yeah.
You may present if you want.
I'm not 100% sure how I can do this, but I can.
You can share it. You can share your screen.
Got it. I think there it is.
Yeah. It's visible.
Yeah. So right. Now, just going back to it, that these were the two quotes which I had started with, that Gagan Hamara Gaon, the whole universe is my home, and that the distance between where you are and where I am. If we care, love each other, it does not matter. I just also wanted to, for your viewers, to show you the look where Pakistan is situated in relevance to in relation to India and etc. And now, as I was talking about that, I created this dance drama called the Song of Munjadaro, because I wanted to show the relationship of dance to our land, to our culture. And here you are the oldest artifact on dance ever found in the world, which is this small little statue called known as the dancing figurine of Mohenjo-daro, which sits today in the Delhi Museum in India. And yeah, you see the relationship between the dance form that I took up, called the Odissi dance, to this to this statue. You see the postures, the what we call tribangi in Odissi dance is totally similar to the posture in which the dancing figurine from Mohenjo-daro is standing. And so I wanted to emphasize that. And then, the other thing people say is, oh, but yoga is not part of our culture either. And here you are from Mohenjo-daro, a seal where you see this man sitting on this stool in a yoga posture. And thirdly, another slide that I wanted to share. Here you are, engraving where you see a person playing what looks like a mirdang or a pakhavaj, or basically a musical instrument, a drum-like instrument. Now, these are things that have been found from the ruins of Mohenjo-daro, and this was the ballet that I created, the Song of Mohenjo-daro, in 1992. And so this is how I start my journey of looking for my cultural roots. Because it was in 1988 that Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi, had come to Islamabad, and between our Prime Minister, who was then Benazir Bhutto, a cultural pact was signed, a cultural accord of exchange of scholars. And so that is how I got this ICCR scholarship to go and study Indian cultural dance in India. I also want to now here say a few words about how similar our cultural history and heritage is. Now, here I'm showing you these three engravings, which are from a temple in Orissa. And look at this. Now, these are badly mutilated, and but these are three engravings from a temple in Sindh, where I live. And you can see the similarity. They're also holding musical instruments in their hands. So I made these research. I went and saw these, and really, I mean, these are probably older than the Orissa temples. So here you are, and I see the figures. I mean, if anyone has seen the temples in Orissa and the dancing figures there, and even in Khajuraho, I mean, you can see the similar poses. So dance definitely existed in this part of the world. And here I also want to share this incredible temple in Sindh. And this is the doorway of the temple where I went and stood and got this photograph. And if you see the temples in Konarak and Bhubaneswar, you have the same kind of architecture. And of course, the Dandiya dance, which is very much part of the Sindhi culture, as well as all the in Gujarat. And here I wanted to share my musicians and myself practicing with them. And so dance is not something that you can divide on the basis of religion. And I've always said, like, that you can't say that it's just like saying that, oh, a bomb is Hindu or Muslim, just because the bomb will kill whether you are Hindu or Muslim, whoever in the area that it is thrown on. In the same way, dance is not Hindu or Muslim. Dance is dance. And it is a dance of the whole subcontinent, and it belongs to us, and we continue it. And so my earliest gurus were from the Uday Shankar school in Almora, and they imbibed the various styles and taught us. And so I feel that it is very important for me as an artist when I create something to be rooted in my tradition and in my past and in my history. Because where do I take the symbols from? Where do I take the postures that I learned from? And I feel that this is my challenge, to transcend religious boundaries, to achieve the status of a contemporary art, and to make it relevant to the inhabitants of the postmodern world, the global world. It is necessary to discuss formal aesthetics as well as social responsibility. That is technique and ideology. So both are important for me. For me, the classical base engenders new forms that are not reproduced only, but actually innovated. So I feel that by being deeply rooted in your cultural identity, you can try and innovate new things. What I've studied Bharatanatyam, I've studied Odissi, I've studied Kathak, I've also studied a bit of Manipuri. And so the different styles, to know Chauka, to know Aramandi, to know Tribangi, and at the same time to try and understand their similarities and their differences. And as a woman living in a very male-dominated society in Pakistan, how the body is gravitationally centered. The relationship between form and content for me has always been a dialectical one. I seek to question prevailing ideologies of patriarchy, and I believe that art should necessarily be related to life. And to conclude, yes, I know I'm just about to end it. So with this belief that which I start with, that Gagan Hamara Gaon, this whole universe is art, I take the traditions of Bharatanatyam, Odissi, even Kathakali, Manipuri, and I put them together in my self and in my art, and as an identity that is pluralistic, that is syncretic, that is not just one, it is multi-dimensional. It is coming from thousands of years, and it is my concern now to preserve our cultural performing arts traditions, to evolve them further, because I think we need the dance and the music which is alive, which is dynamic, contemporary, and relevant. It should be able to harmonize the physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual dimensions of life, have the power to touch and communicate at all levels, as well as transcend and to transform by its very magical language that is inherent in Indian classical dance. So thank you. This is the major points that I share. Of course, if we do the whole paper, it will be much more elaborate and etc. Thank you very much. And
thank you, ma'am, for a very interesting presentation. And then the question answer we will have at the end of the session. So those who wish to know more about your paper may ask at the end. But it was very interesting presentation, and just we try to understand the kind of identity related dilemma on the basis of your experiences and then what you felt. So very interesting presentation. Now I would actually earlier I got some other list. So as per new list, the presenters who are present here, Mr. Nina Patek, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, Faculty of Arts, University of Ljubljana, Slovenia. She teaches several courses on South Asian philosophical and religious tradition, with a special emphasis on ancient Hindu philosophical schools, religious traditions, and Buddhism. She is the director of Institute of Monastic Studies and Contemporary Science, And she, along with one of another faculty in the same university, Ramzak Popič, he is again assistant professor. And this paper's title is Buddhism in the Himalayan deserts, digital documentation and presentation of Ladakh's Yogi traditions. So over to you, ma'am. Next 20 minutes. In next 20 minutes, you are supposed to present it. Over
Thank
to
you
you.
very much. Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm very happy to be here with you today. So I'm Nina Patek, and I prepared this paper with my colleague, Dr. Damjan Popič. And he fell seriously ill a few days ago and unfortunately could not join us today. And nevertheless, we decided that I attend the conference and do my best to present the central theme of our paper, in which I'm not that skilled as a philosopher. I'm in charge of analysis of philosophical texts, but I will try to fill in Damjan's absence somehow. And if you will have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us after the conference, in particular, Dr. Damjan Popič, who will be happy to provide you with any further information. So I will share my PowerPoint presentation now. Okay, today so can you see my PowerPoint presentation? Is okay?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. So today I would like to briefly present the Digital Humanities Project, Buddhism in the Himalayan Desert, the tradition of yogis and yoginis in Ladakh, which is dedicated to preserving, analyzing, and disseminating the multifaceted Buddhist heritage of Ladakh. By integrating traditional fieldwork methods, such as documenting inscriptions, texts, and frescoes, with cutting-edge digital technologies, the project aims to capture both the tangible and intangible dimensions of this rich cultural milieu. So central to our efforts is the creation of a comprehensive relational database that unites diverse data types, including historical sites, artistic works, and biographical information about key figures in Ladakh's Buddhist lineages. Decentralized repository not only allows for cross-referencing between textual sources, artwork, and individuals, but also opens new avenues for comparative studies, visual analysis, and network mapping of the region's religions and cultural history. And furthermore, the inclusion of oral histories and interviews ensure that personal narratives and community knowledge, often overlooked in traditional preservation efforts, are safeguarded for future generations. By situating our work within the broader field of digital humanities, we highlight how technologically driven approaches can bridge gaps in accessibility and foster collaborative research. The integration of geospatial data, image processing, and metadata standards facilitate innovative methods of engagement, enabling scholars, local communities, and general public to explore and interact with the material via intuitive interfaces. So moreover, our project demonstrates how digital humanities initiatives can serve as a powerful vehicle for knowledge preservation, providing a dynamic platform that can adapt to ongoing discoveries and user feedback. Ultimately, Buddhism in the Himalayan Desert project underscores the potential of digital humanities to expand the horizons of historical inquiry, preserve endangered cultural legacies, and empower communities to be active stewards of their own heritage. So before I present the particular segments of mentioned interactive database in more detail, let me highlight some broader aspects of our project. So Buddhism, which has its roots in India, has survived as a dominant philosophical religious system in the land of its origin only in its northernmost area, the Union Territory of Ladakh in the Indian Himalayas, in the Tibetan version known as Vajrayana. a dynamic system of diverse streams, schools, and monastic institutions. The monastic landscape of Ladakh is also enriched by remote and largely unknown tradition of Buddhist hermits and hermitesses, yogis and yoginis, which has been continuously preserved in Ladakh since the 11th century, when the legendary Mahasiddha Naropa, one of the pioneers of Tantric Buddhist Eremitic tradition, visited the land for the first time. And his teacher, the Bengali master Tilopa, founded a system of Buddhist tantric philosophy and meditation techniques that are still practiced by yogis today. The tradition spread from India to Tibet, where an independent form of Buddhist eremitism gradually became institutionalized in the 12th century. So does the monastic order of Kagyu emerge in the independent form of Tantric Buddhist eremitism, integrating into its system the meditation practices of the preceding yogis and yoginis. In parallel with the institutionalization, a form of independent eremitism which nurtures the authentic core of Tantric Buddhism has survived in the Indian Himalayan region to the present day. So while institutional monasticism in Vajrayana Buddhism, including the Ladakh region, has been relatively exhaustively studied, the tradition of yogis and yoginis in Ladakh has not received systematic and in-depth research yet, as is evident from a small number of scholarly studies, which, however, are primarily concerned with different aspects of institutional monasticism, with only minor references to eremitism. And the reason for the lack of research, apart from the difficult mountainous terrain in which retreat centers and hermitages are located, is also the difficulty of accessing the heart of the tradition and its esoteric teaching, which are still preserved by the process of transmission from teacher to disciple, and many of which have not been written down and can only be communicated directly to us by yogis and yoginis themselves. So the tradition of Buddhist eremitism in Ladakh is still marked by the abandonment of the conventional way of life and a certain amount of retreat from involvement in social life and monastic institution, and by the devoted practice of secret tantric practices away from the worldly affairs. So to gain initial insights into diverse aspects of unexplored Buddhist eremitism in the Ladakh region, some preliminary research was conducted in 2018 and 2019-2022. And based on the latter, we have developed a set of thematic fields and research questions that we systematically investigate in the framework of the project Buddhism in the Himalayan Deserts, the tradition of yogis and yoginis in Ladakh, funded by the Slovenian Research and Innovation Agency. Our project addresses the lack of scholarly research with the aim to create a multifaceted study on the tradition of diverse expression across Ladakh. So in addition to comprehensive research on diverse aspects of eremitic tradition in past and present, research aims to demonstrate the relevance of this remote tradition to the history of Buddhism as a whole and to the preservation of its authentic teaching in the future. In addition, the Buddhist tradition in Ladakh region has been undergoing unstoppable change in recent decades due to rapid changes in infrastructural development, modernization, tourism, and some of the negative impacts of globalization, with the different aspects of cultural, spiritual, and material heritage being threatened. In parallel, we work on the documentation of Kagyu monasteries, meditation caves, and paintings in the greater Ladakh area, as well as an inventory of intangible heritage such as religious festivals, rituals, spiritual practices, etc., which are compiled in interactively designed database that is unique in the field of digitalization of Buddhist tangible and intangible heritage. So here are some examples of frescoes. We document meditation centers, particular hermitages, and desert settlements. So, and digital humanities is interdisciplinary field that merges computational methods with traditional humanities scholarship to analyze, preserve, and disseminate cultural, historical, and artistic knowledge. So by those tools, such as databases, geospatial mapping, image processing, and network analysis, DH enables researchers to tackle complex questions at scale while democratizing access to fragile and geographically remote heritage. So for projects like Buddhism in the Himalayan desert, DH offers transformative potential in 3 key areas. So the first is integrating tangible and intangible heritage. So traditional preservation efforts often prioritize physical artifacts, for instance, texts, monuments over intangible practices, rituals, oral narratives. And DH bridges this gap by enabling the systematic linking of material objects to their cultural context. For instance, so we create some kind of relational database which can connect frescoes in Ladakhi monasteries to biographical records of the yogis who inspired them, as well as oral histories describing their spiritual significance. And second is multimedia platforms which allow oral tradition to be archived alongside 3D scans of artifacts, ensuring that both the form and meaning of heritage are preserved. So DH tools break down also barriers to accessing cultural heritage, particularly for remote communities. And by digitizing Ladakh's yogic tradition, our project empowers global scholars to conduct cross-regional comparison, for instance, tracing doctrinal links between Ladakh and Tibet and Bhutan through network analysis. And it provides Ladakhi communities with digital archives to reclaim narratives often mediated by external institutions. And the third, geospatial interfaces visualize pilgrimage routes or monastic networks, making complex historical data intuitively navigable. So about addressing urgent threats, climate change, urbanization, and cultural globalization increasingly endanger Ladakh's heritage. DH responds by creating high-fidelity digital surrogate, so photogrammetry or deteriorating frescoes to mitigate physical loss, safeguarding oral histories from language shift or generational memory loss through audiovisual archives, and enabling iterative updates to databases as new discoveries emerge, ensuring the project remains a living source. And while digital humanities expands preservation possibilities, it also raises ethical challenges. The first is participatory design. Collaborating with Ladakhi monastic scholars and communities ensure culturally sensitive digitalization. And the second is digital colonialism, frameworks like FAIR principles must balance open access with local ownership. But our work exemplifies DH capacity to synthesize disparate data, so linking inscriptions, oral histories, and artworks in a unified database mirror initiative like Buddhist Digital Resource Center, which preserve endangered Tibetan texts, and foster transdisciplinary dialogue by combining philology, philosophy, art history, and computer science. Our project aligns with DH ethos of methodological innovation. And empower communities, digital platforms return agency to Ladakhis, allowing them to steward their heritage amid globalization. And a few words about methodology and data collection. So we aim to investigate the historical and contemporary aspects of Buddhist Eremitic tradition in Ladakh and
Kindly
document.
complete in 2 minutes, 2 more minutes.
Okay. So then I will just say a few words about technological implementation. So relational databases are particularly important in projects like Buddhism in the Himalayan desert due to their ability to organize, link, and query complex multidimensional data in ways that mirror the interconnected nature of cultural heritage. By structuring information into tables with defined relationships, such as linking Yogi's biographical records to the frescoes they inspired, the monasteries they inhabited, or the oral histories that describe their teaching, relational databases enable researchers to uncover patterns and connections that might otherwise remain obscured. So this is the sample of our complex table in which all data, historicals, biographical, are closely linked to each other, and this database can be seen on the web page of our project. So, and the relational databases support advanced analytical tools such as network mapping, contemporary visualization, which are critical for interpreting the spatial, social, and historical dimensions of Ladakhi tradition of yogis. And by centralizing diverse data types, text, images, geospatial coordinates, and oral narratives into a unified system, the project not only preserves fragmented knowledge, but also creates a foundation for interdisciplinary scholarship, where art historians, philosophers, philologists, and anthropologists can collaboratively explore questions that transcend traditional disciplinary boundaries. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Patek. So we'll move to the next presentation, and the presenter is Mr. Adele Tomlin. He's a British scholar, translator, and writer. Are you present here?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay. So he has a two great in Tibetan Buddhism, and he's exhausted pilgrimages in Southeast Asia, and one book has been, she is working on the books in this area. So over to you, Ms. Adele Tomlin.
Okay. Hello.
Next 20 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Professor. And yes, my name's Adele Tomlin. And thank you so much, Professor Pranav Kumar, for organizing this amazing event over the next 2 days. It must be logistically incredibly difficult, I would have thought. But anyway, thank you for giving us all the opportunity to speak about various topics connected to Indian traditions. And so I should just say at the start that of course, I've lived in India for several years. I'm in India now, and I'm a huge fan of Indian culture, languages, spiritual traditions, and so on. But in particular, my speciality is Buddhism, in particular, Vajrayana Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, and Tibetan Buddhism. So, but nonetheless, I've spent a lot of time in India, and so I feel very honored to be able to speak about this particular subject today at this conference in front of so many esteemed scholars. So starting, can I share my screen? Can I share my screen?
You can share. You may share.
Is it showing?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so this is my, so the subject today is on the importance of the ancient Indian philosophy and practice of vegetarianism and ahimsa in the 20th century. So, so as many of you will, of course, be aware, Ahimsa is an ancient Indian principle of non-violence towards all living beings. And in that respect, it's still, I would say, very much alive and well in India. Certainly, many people practice this as a philosophy, as a way of life. And even recently, there are very recent examples in Indian public life, political life, and so on. So, so obviously, probably most people here are aware of this Indian principle of ahimsa. And when I say Indian, I'm talking about obviously many, many centuries ago, ancient Indian knowledge, you know, is the Indic subcontinent before the creation of countries with names like Nepal and Bangladesh and so on. You know, we're talking about the Indic subcontinent here, this kind of huge, vast part of land and culture, which spans many different cultures and traditions. But nonetheless, ahimsa is, we could say, an ancient Indian principle, which is non-harm, non-violence, and it applies to actions towards all living beings. And it is actually considered also a cardinal precept of Jainism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. So these are, you know, obviously extremely important spiritual traditions of India. And it is inspired generally by a premise that all living beings have what we call the spark, or something of divine energy or spiritual energy, Buddha nature. And that all beings do not want to suffer, they all want to be happy, they all want to stay alive, and they do not want to be eaten by others. So this is like the general principle of ahimsa is not harming beings, because we all share that sort of kind of general quality of wanting to be happy and to stay alive. So here, just a very brief summary of some of the Indian spiritual traditions about eating animals. So, for example, Jainism are considered to be some of the kind of strictest, if you like, in terms of they're vegans, they avoid harming any living thing, and that also includes plants and insects, which is very, very difficult to practice, obviously. Hindus also practice vegetarianism, and they want to minimize harm to other beings. And as many of you will know, in certain states of India, it is illegal to eat cow, to eat beef, for example. And then you have the yogic sattvic diet. So this is a diet which encourages eating foods which are minimally harmful to the body, environment, and other living beings. So again, you've got this yogic tradition of vegetarianism. I actually studied yoga in an Indian ashram when I first came to India many years ago. And one of the first things they taught there was the Indian yogic diet of, ahimsa, but also not ingesting animals, not ingesting the flesh or blood of animals. So this was very, very important on that ashram. And then you have Buddhism, which is kind of my main speciality, which is that in Buddhism, Shakyamuni Buddha, who spent most of his life, if you like, teaching in India, going around India. One of his main teachings was on not killing, refraining from deliberately killing living beings or encouraging others to kill. So he also listed butchery and hunting as a wrong livelihood. And monastics generally are forbidden from eating meat generally, which I'll go on and talk about a little bit now. So the principle, I don't know, I'm not an expert or a scholar in Indian ancient wisdom like the Vedas, but certainly it's considered to have appeared in the Vedas, which, as you all know, is a very old spiritual and philosophical belief system from the Indic subcontinent. And more recently, you have someone like Mahatma Gandhi, who promoted the principle of ahimsa in all of spheres of life, including politics. And it is said that he promised his mother he would never eat non-vegetarian food and joined the London Vegetarian Society and became its secretary. Now, again, I'm not an expert in this. I'm just kind of using this as a background. before I go into talking about Buddhism. So, and here you have a picture of Mahatma Gandhi in 1931 in London, giving a speech on the moral basis of vegetarianism. So that was something that Mahatma Gandhi, obviously, not only from his background in India, but also in the UK, he was very influential there, and in setting up ideas about vegetarianism, even in the UK. So now if we go on to Buddhism and the principle of Ahimsa, and why Ahimsa in Buddhism is very much part of Buddhist tradition. So Buddha himself spoke many times about how killing was against the Buddhist precepts. So, for example, here is a quote on not killing. So he says, monastics, one possessed of three qualities is put into the lower realms according to his actions. What are those three? One is himself a taker of life, encourages another to do the same, and approves of that taking life. And then there's a quote here where he says, monastics, one possessed of three qualities is put into higher realms according to his actions. What three are those? He himself abstains from taking life, encourages another to so abstain, and approves such abstention. So now there is some idea that the Buddha gave permission to Buddhist monastics to eat animals. And again, this is something that is debated, but it certainly seems to be very clear from the literature that actually he only allowed monastics to eat meat in very, very strict and circumstances. And this is what's known as the threefold purity rule. In the time of original Buddhism or Indian Buddhism, let's say, monastics would beg for their food, they would beg for alms, and that was how they got their food. They were completely reliant on lay people for their sustenance, for their food. And so at one meal, apparently the Buddha was offered meat by a sponsor and his Sangha, and the Sangha asked him, should we eat this? This is an animal. And he then gave a teaching where he said, you know, you could only eat meat that's offered to you if it had died naturally, or, you know, it had not been specifically killed to eat. So this is called the threefold purity rule. And here's the quote here. It says, Bhagavan, I've heard this. They slaughter living creatures, especially for the ascetic Gautama. The ascetic Gautama knowingly eats meat prepared on his behalf. This is a deed he caused. So this was a criticism of Buddha at the time, they say. And so Buddha's response was, those who say this do not repeat what I've said. They misrepresent me with what is false and untrue. In 3 cases, I say that meat may not be eaten. If it's seen, heard, or suspected, it was killed on purpose to eat. And in 3 cases, I say that meat may be eaten if it's not seen, heard, or suspected it was killed on purpose to eat. These are 3 cases in which meat may be eaten. Now, as many of you will know who've been to Southeast Asia or even in India as well, we will see many monastics eating meat. And this seems to be a kind of some sort of misunderstanding of this threefold purity rule or maybe a sort of not even knowing. But certainly within the Indian Buddhist tradition, I think this is still kept to, because India traditionally has many other spiritual traditions which are vegetarian, whereas I think in other traditions like Tibetan Buddhism, for example, you will see a lot of monastics eating meat and going in restaurants and buying meat and so on. And so this is actually breaching the Vinaya of what the Buddha taught on that. Now, another reason why the Indian tradition is so important in terms of Buddhism for vegetarianism is also because the Buddha listed killing animals and butchery as a wrong livelihood. So apart from the Vinaya, he actually stated there were several wrong livelihoods, and butchery and killing animals was listed as one. And he said, in the literature, it says monks, a lay follower should not engage in 5 types of business, which are these 5: business in weapons, business in human beings, business in meat, business in intoxicants, and business in poison. These are the 5 types of business that a lay follower should not engage on. So there you've got the Buddha very clearly saying that selling meat, killing meat, butchering meat is all what would be considered a wrong livelihood. So again, you could say, well, by eating meat, by purchasing meat, even if you don't kill it yourself, you're supporting a wrong livelihood. And that is, again, against the sort of general teachings of Buddha. Now, there were forbidden meats, so it wasn't that any type of meat could be eaten, even if it was offered, and it was threefold pure. So there were several types of meat the Buddha said monastics should never eat, even if they were offered it and it was pure and it had died naturally. And that was, for example, types of birds, some owls, reptiles, amphibians, and so on. And lions, tigers, and bears, meat of carnivores. So yeah, so that's this. So just moving now on to the Mahayana. So that's kind of more the Hinayana, as they call it, which is like more Theravadan traditions. So if we go into the Mahayana tradition and the sutras of the Mahayana, then it's very clear that Buddha clearly, especially in this particular sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra, in chapter 8, he gives many, many reasons why it would be wrong and unethical and harmful for particularly Buddhists, but any human being to eat animals. So here, there's a quote here on the slide. It says, the Buddha says, "It is not true, Mahamati, that meat is proper food and permissible for the Shravaka when the animal was not killed by himself, when he did not order others to kill it, and when it was not specially meant for him." So here in this sutra, you have Buddha saying, even the threefold purity rule does not actually really apply. And they say that the reason he gave these Mahayana teachings was that the Hinayana teachings were more sort of to prepare the foundation to step up into the Mahayana view, which is to abandon eating animals altogether. So here you've got a few more quotes from the Mahayana Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra. So if you can read them, it says number 3, it says, "To those who eat meat, there are detrimental effects. To those who do not merit, Mahamati, you should know that meat eaters bring detrimental effects upon themselves." And then number 4, it says, "Let the practitioner yogi refrain from eating flesh as it is born of himself, as the eating involves transgression, as flesh is produced of semen and blood, and as the killing of animals causes terror to living beings." And then another quote is, "For profit, sentient beings are destroyed. For flesh, money is paid out. They are both evildoers, and the deed matures in the hells." Okay, so that is, you can see there, that's very clear. The Buddha is teaching against that. Now, another Mahayana sutra, which is the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, which was said to have been the teaching that Buddha gave as he passed into the Mahaparinirvana, is he says, that even the eating of meat extinguishes what's called the seed of compassion in us all, and that unless the animal has died naturally, it is prohibited, and even rejects the idea in this sutra that it would be allowed for a monk to take meat even if it was offered, and so on. So there you can see there's a difference there. Now, moving to a more contemporary, if you like, sort of setting nowadays, of course, the way meat is killed, the way animals are killed for meat, the mass factory farming, the effect on the environment has significantly increased. So people are now eating 3 meals a day with meat in it, which never used to happen even globally. So another idea that I had here was also that particularly people who work in mass factory farms, slaughterhouses, they are said to suffer from severe post-traumatic stress disorders similar to soldiers involved in military combat. So you can imagine how traumatizing it must be to live, to work 9 to 5 every day in a slaughterhouse where you're continually slaughtering highly sentient beings like cows and pigs and chickens. So they say that these people suffer severe depression and psychological trauma, and often attract people who are psychologically unwell as well to do those jobs. So it just increases levels of aggression and mental unwellness in people. Now, people also think that Vajrayana Buddhism, meat eating is allowed, and you'll meet many people in the Vajrayana tradition, like particularly like Tibetan Buddhism, and they think that it's allowed because it's Tantric Buddhism. And again, this is a kind of a misconception, although there were people in Tibet who ate meat because of the high altitude and the lack of, I guess you could say, plant food easily available. Nonetheless, there was also a huge amount of vegetarianism and practice of vegetarianism in Tibet. And here I've got a quote from Jeffrey Barstow, who wrote The Faults of Meat, Tibetan Buddhist Vegetarian Writing, where he says, vegetarianism was not only present in pre-communist Tibet, it was in fact a significant aspect of Tibetan religious practice. Furthermore, these vegetarian lamas came from all the major Buddhist lineages in Tibet, from all regions and from all time periods. So some were relatively minor figures, but others were among the most important masters of their day and remain well known centuries later. So again, this kind of misconception that, you know, Tantric Buddhists or Vajrayana Buddhists were allowed to eat meat is just not correct. And a lot of recent scholarship on this is kind of pushing back against this idea. And also that, you know, that this idea that in Tibet, because you couldn't get plant food easily, that meant everyone had to eat meat. Again, this is just not correct. That's a misconception. And there are many great Buddhist masters who were strict vegetarians pre-communist Tibet, pre-1959. So here, so on a kind of final note, if you like, obviously it's an extremely important note. Sorry?
Yeah, kindly conclude in another 1 minute.
Thank you. So on a final note, of course, and a very important one is harming the environment and not harming the environment and its natural resources, our planet. So although this was not necessarily specifically mentioned by Shakyamuni Buddha, nonetheless, as people who are concerned with the planet, with the environment, it is very clear today that this huge amount of meat eating is causing catastrophic harm to the environment, is wasting natural resources, extinction of species, the psychological damage, obviously, to beings, but also the waste of water, the waste of land, and its contribution to climate change. So on that note, on that final note, so just to sum up, basically, why did I choose this subject to present at this conference? Well, this was about looking at ancient Indian intellectual knowledge and spiritual knowledge and how it's relevant to the 21st century. And I would say that one of the most important kind of legacies of Indian spiritual tradition, Indian intellectual tradition, would be not only the principle of ahiṃsā, but its practice of vegetarianism. Because the rest of the world seems to be going in a very sort of very mass meat eating way, which is destroying the planet and killing millions of animals. But India still retains this very important, beneficial legacy to the planet, to human beings, and to animals. And in that respect, I think it's something that India is very unique to India, and it's very valuable. And myself as a British person, I think it's you know, a legacy that is worth promoting and talking as much as possible about. So thank you for listening, and I'll just stop my share. Okay, so yeah, so thank you for listening to that, and yeah, if there's any questions after then, I will try and answer them. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Thank you. There is some network issue. So thank you, Ms. Adele, for highlighting the relevance of Indian tradition in terms of restoring the vegetarianism and ahiṃsā and how it is relevant even today, despite the fact that these things are very rare in some of the parts of the world. Without we'll move to the next presenter before we'll take questions at the end. So the next presenter is Professor Shivani Sharma. She was former chairperson, Department of Philosophy, Punjab University, Chandigarh, and has been serving as a visitors nominee for Central Universities since 2020. And she is one of the UGC. She is a well-known scholar on Indian knowledge system. So it would be a very interesting lecture going to be delivered by Professor Shivani Sharma. Over to you, ma'am, Shivani Sharma.
Thank you. First of all, namaskar to everyone. And let me briefly, formally thank the organizer, Professor Pranav Kumarji, for giving me this opportunity to share my views on the ideas of Indian knowledge system. I also see Professor Rajneesh Mishra ji, sir, namaskar. So it's always a pleasure to see you and listen to you also. So the title that I've decided for myself today is on Ātma-Bodha, that is self-knowledge. Ātma-Bodha means self-knowledge, and Jñānāgni, that is knowledge is symbolically treated in Indian context as fire. So I'll be trying to look into the reasons as to why self-knowledge is the core question of Indian knowledge system or Indian tradition, Indian culture, and why do we uphold this principle of knowledge in a symbolism or in a symbolic form as a fire. And for this, I shall be referring to Vishnu Sukt. I shall be also taking help from Sri Aurobindo's thought, whereby, he insists that everything that we see around is not merely physically given. It has to be understood in terms of some kind of representation of certain subtle entities that we look. For example, he would suggest that cow is not merely a physical cow that we see around. It represents a river Saraswati. It represents nourishment. It also represents prakash, that is knowledge. So when it comes to things which are given to us in a physical form, it is not merely to be treated as physically or as physical entities only. And this symbolism is embedded, I believe, I mean, it runs through the fabric of Indian knowledge system. We cannot do away without it. We cannot simply just brush it aside that no, there is a clear-cut demarcation that these are the questions of consciousness, these are the questions of matter. I believe uh, the symbolism which represents consciousness studies, though embedded in materialism or through matter, one has to unfold the answers. And that is how, this symbolism is so very significant in the context of Indian knowledge system. So, having said this, I believe that there are fundamental questions with regard to Bharatiya Gyan Parampara or Indian knowledge system. One is that how far we can treat this concept of knowledge as, if knowledge generates, because India, I believe, is primarily a knowledge driven society. We do not find the element of fear or competition or some kind of this survival of the fittest theory does not apply to Indian mindset primarily. And if so, if this is true, that we are a knowledge driven society, and many scholars would agree to this, how is it that this fear and, how we generate this competition, and we have already witnessed plenty of, suicides coming through, being reported from Kota, from Rajasthan, that what kind of education system we are trying to promote, what kind of education we are looking in the Indian context, in the traditional context, when we say that Vidya Yasa Vimuktaye, Vidya Dadati Vinayam. When we look into the paradigm of Vidya Dadati Vinayam, Vidya Yasa Vimuktaye, and we look into the educational system that is propounded through the kind of stress and fear of competition or, ranks and marks, I believe these are diametrically opposed principles in spirit. And somehow Indian society and Indian, the nation as such, has fallen to this trap of, I don't wish to take names, but yes, these are all documentations are available on internet. So I might not, mince my words. When we read Macaulay's minutes on education, so according to him, the purpose of education is to fetch jobs. The purpose of education is to produce clerks, which I believe is or cannot be the purpose of education with Indian DNA, if I may say, use this phrase. Why? Because to seek security, it ensures that there is some kind of an insecurity, uncertainty going at the back of the mind, which I believe uh, cannot nourish or cannot be it cannot become a nourishing factor when it comes to education. And education is not merely literacy, it is fundamentally grounded uh, in knowledge system, and which is not merely information, or which is not merely uh, being literate enough. So having said this, I also wish to put through the scholar's lens that the idea that knowledge is universal, surely knowledge is universal. It is not that Indians and Indian knowledge system does not acknowledge the Socratic wisdom. When we often quote Socrates, we often recommend, teachings of Aristotle's. We often read Plato's Republic and the ideas that are shared within the system. But still, there is a uniqueness to every culture, because every knowledge system draws its roots from the ground of the cultural value system that is, offered in the name of the national identity. So in that context, I feel when it comes to knowledge or uniqueness or unique contributions that have been made uh, through the Indian soil. There are plenty of them. For example, yoga could be one, yajna could be one. Not only this, Bhagavad Gita is full of the lessons that we talk about: sthit pragyata, and anasakti, abhyas, vairagya. These are the concepts, detachment, and plenty of those ideas are very, very unique to Indian culture. So it is difficult for us to say if knowledge is universal. Yes, knowledge is certainly universal. Yet, some classification has to be done, keeping in mind the cultural system out of which this knowledge system gets generated. So, also, I believe when we talk of knowledge system, uh, it is also to be kept in mind when that this survival of the fittest, as I said in the beginning, that survival of the fittest is not the uh, primary or the thriving idea that motivates the Indian mindset. Why? Because here, as Sri Aurobindo would say, that life comes from upward, from downward movement. That is, it descends from the divine. It is not the Darwinian model whereby, we are reforming or we are evoluting from the lowest category. The lowest, uh, probably for the Indian culture, or for the Indian knowledge system, is it can go up till any end. But the origin of the existence, human existence, begins from up. It is a downward movement. It is from the divinity descends, and that is how, the avatar system, that is the incarnation of Lord Rama, Lord Krishna. uh, we can visualize these avatar, the 10 avatars. So I feel that this is also very, very significant while we try to interpret different ideas of Indian knowledge system. Also, I just, as I said, that we also wish to see, uh, as I said, that I'll be referring to Vishnu Sukta also, that knowledge is something which is Jagrivan Sahasamindhate, which means one who is awakened, one who is mindful, one who is, who is knowledgeable. He is a bearer of fire. And now again, I would, resort back to Sri Aurobindo's interpretation when he says that everything has to be understood in symbols. And for example, he talks about cow. Similarly, he talks about ashva, that is a horse. Horse is not merely a physical animal, but he also represents energy. He also represents, zest to live life. So he also represents matter, pure matter. And also, when I say Jagrivan Sahasamindhate, it also resounds that knowledge is a responsible phenomena. When it occurs, you are never the same. That is one of the fundamental features of knowledge, that you completely transform. If this knowledge, any knowledge, has touched you, it is essential that you are no longer the same individual that you were earlier. So ignorance is bliss, surely it is, but the feature of knowledge is somehow related to transformation. And hence, if any education system does not provide us this opportunity to have an encounter of ourselves, to have an encounter of Atma-Vidya, knowing yourself, or an opportunity to transform yourself, probably that education system is not doing a great service to the mankind. And also this Jagrivan Samindhate, Saha Samindhate, when it is said that fire acts in two forms, that knowledge is fire, because this is one of the prime questions, that one is self-knowledge, and this self-knowledge is certainly like fire. And fire has two major features. One is that of prakasha, that is brightness and knowledge. And the other one is that tapa, that is the heat of fire. Now, this heat is essentially embedded in some kind of practice mode or active life. Now, this active life represents, it has to be tapascharya, it has to be grounded in living in less or living in the minimum. And also, if we see related, try to understand it in the context of yagya, yagya in itself represents fire, but it is not merely the ritualistic fire that one can think of. It is also the fire which represents a form of active life, and this active life is essentially the meaning of the karmanyata, the feeling, the responsibility of being a doer, an actor, an agent. This represents one of the fundamental features of knowledge or knowledge bearer individual. Hence, I wish to submit that this self-inquiry, there are, plenty of stories we find. For example, in Vedant, there are plenty of stories. One of the interesting stories is that there is one, a washerman, and he has a donkey to, as his property, and he takes him every day to, city to, sell off his products. On his back, on the, keeping the load on donkey's back. And he would tie him, and then he would go to the bazaar and would sell his stuff, and then he would come back. And then both of them would come back home to their, village. So one day something happens that he forgets to take the rope to tie the donkey. And somehow there is an acharya, there is a teacher of Vedant who's going back from some place, and he watches that this washerman is very in some trouble. He's in some kind of a dilemma. So he asks him what has gone wrong. So this washerman explains him that he has forgotten that rope to tie him. Now this acharya, this teacher, suggests the washerman that you don't have to worry at all. Take this donkey to the tree and act as if you are tying him. Just in front of his eyes, you just have to move your hand as if you're tying him, and just go, relax. And he is surprised to see when, he just performs this ritual of tying the donkey. And when he comes back from the market by selling off his products and goods, he finds that the donkey is still there, and he's surprised. How is it so? Now he asks the donkey and tries to take him away back for village. The donkey refuses. The donkey says, no, I'm not going, I'm staying here. So again that acharya appears, and then he suggests, now you have to untie the donkey as well. It is not that you have just tied him, but it is now time to untie as well. The point is that the education system provides us plenty of conditions. Now these conditions or conditioning of mind needs to be done away. these conditionings sometimes is essential, but sometimes they have their own limitations as well. So it is high time that we understand, and I'm glad to listen to speakers from abroad, from all countries. We are. It is a great effort. It is a great sacrifice, I would say. So the point is that it is time to understand and interpret the fire of, or the knowledge which is to be seen and interpreted as fire. I believe it is high time that we interpret the symbolism that is embedded here in the Indian knowledge system. Otherwise, scholars like MacDonald, they would and they have, it is a recorded sentence that India could not write any history. Why? Because India has no history. Now, this is a little unkind, I would say, and not only me who's saying it. Organ Troy would also, recommend this, that this is very unkind on the part of MacDonald to say such a thing, that India has no history. Why? Because they need to see through the lens of MacDonald. Only then history will be history. Even Hegel would also say that Asian history is no history. So such claims does not belittle the Indian wisdom in any way, but it shows the prejudiced and the biased attitude of uh, you know a class of, or a group of people, which actually is, it may not serve any purpose, academic purpose, I would say. So hence, I believe that Indian mind may be ahistorical, it may be achronological. We may find, and there is no harm in accepting also, that the chronological sense, as we find in the West, may be absent here, but it does not mean that India is merely a product of last 500 years or last the invasions. So in that context, I would say India needs to understand the tradition of wisdom and this knowledge, entire knowledge stream that is coming or pouring down to us. It has been in continuation. It is not that we are creating anything else, but it is our duty as academicians, as teachers, to read it properly, to interpret in the right paraphrase. And I believe also, and one very interesting question, which is very, very pertinent
Ma'am,
in the context.
please continue.
All right,
Please
all
continue.
right.
Yeah.
It is about the Vedic. Just last question. It is about the Veda being a Parushaya. Uh, why? Because the revelation, the concept of revelation seen here in the Indian context is altogether different. It is not that uh, something is being revealed on my choice, that I have decided that this revelation should come to me. Revelation is something which occurs to XYZ only because of the credentials that they have. This again proves that revelation is not a phenomena which occurs on our wish and will. Veda being knowledge in itself, Veda being knowledge system, has been in the form of revelations, which is not, which has revelations in Indian context, select individuals and not otherwise. So having said this, thank you so much, Professor Kumar, for giving me this
Thank you.
opportunity. I
Thank
hope
you,
I have
ma'am.
not much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for highlighting some core questions of Indian tradition like Ātma-Bodha and Jñānāgni, and with the help of Vishnu Sutra and Arvindo's ideas you have highlighted, and then relevance of these all ideas in today's world, wherein the survival of fittest and other materialistic ideas are very, very, very important. Thank you so much, ma'am. We'll come back at the end if there is any question. So moving to the next presenter, Dr. Jing Gao Bai. He is from Japan. So, sir, over to you. Next 20 minutes.
Thank you very
Dr.
much.
Jing Gao, yeah.
I will share my PowerPoint for you all.
Yeah, kindly.
Okay, can you see it? Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to express my gratitude to Professor Pranav Kumar for the kind invitation. I am Jinghao Bai, a project lecturer from the Faculty of Buddhist Studies at Minobusan University in Japan. Due to time constraints for the presentation, I am unable to read my full paper in detail and will primarily presenting using these PowerPoint slides. My title is on Gadagadasvara in chapter 23 of the Sadharma Pundarinka Sutra, exploring the dual interpretative possibilities of melodious sound and stammering sound. These contents are from my paper. First of all, introduction. One Bodhisattva Gadagadasvara's story in chapter 23 of the Sadharma Pundarinka Sutra. The chapter 23 describes Gadagadasvara as coming from an Eastern world to hear the Sadharma Pundarinka Sutra in this world. Through Shakyamuni Buddha's introduction, he demonstrates the attainment of samadhi of universal manifestation of all forms and his efforts in disseminating the Sadharma Pundarinka Sutra. 2. Discrepancy in the name's interpretation. The Sanskrit name Gadagadasvara literally means stammering sound, which contradicts the Chinese translation melodious sound and the Tibetan translation clear and bright sound. This discrepancy has led to significant scholarly debates regarding the true meaning of the Bodhisattva's name. Over the past century, scholars such as Hoei Izumi, Gie Honda, Masatoshi Ueki, and Yukihiro Okada have systematically explored this issue. Most scholars have attempted to reconcile the Sanskrit Gadagadasvara with the Chinese melodious sound through phonetic distortions or etymological analysis. Yukihiro Okada firmly argues that the term should be understood as stammering sound rather than melodious sound. There is no consensus on the interpretation of Gadagadasvara's name, nor on the deeper intention behind the introduction of this bodhisattva in the Sadharma Pundarinka Sutra. This study critically examines the dual interpretative possibilities of Gadagadasvara, whether it should mean melodious sound or stammering sound. By referencing various commentaries on the Miao Fa Lianhua Jing, it demonstrates that both vernacular and classical Sanskrit traditions allow for two opposing interpretations of the term. The study further explores whether stammering sound contradicts the Sadharma Pundarinka's definitions of a bodhisattva preacher or its principles of dissemination. 2. Previous studies on the interpretation of the bodhisattva's name, Gadagadasvara. First of all, Izumi's sacred sound theory, Gadagadasvara equal to Gangadasvara. Izumi argued that the sound originates from the Ganges River, symbolizing sacredness. This interpretation relies heavily on myth. However, this theory ignores the Tibetan context and lacks linguistic support, making it less convincing. Honda's onomatopoeic approach. Honda suggested that Gadagadasvara is an onomatopoeic representation of thunder, drums, or buffalo sounds. This theory is creative but flawed. It relies on translations that are not universally accepted and lacks a solid linguistic foundation. Ueki's articulate speaker argument. Ueki proposed that Gadagadasvara refers to an articulate speaker using Sanskrit philology. This interpretation is innovative but problematic. It misapplies Sanskrit linguistic principles to the context of the sutra, leading to inconsistencies. Okada's interpretation. Okada focused on the emotional authenticity of stammering, suggesting it reflects genuine fear or joy. This perspective is insightful. However, the context of fear and joy remains unresolved, leaving the interpretation incomplete. 3. Interpretations of the Bodhisattva's name Gada-Gada-Swara in Tibetan and Chinese translations. In various Tibetan editions, the Bodhisattva's name is rendered as Sang Sang Pe Yang. Sang Sang Po is an adjective meaning radiantly, luminous, or bright and shining, often used with terms like moonlight, lightning, or starlight, but rarely with sound. Scholar Gie Honda translated it as pure sound, implying a voice as bright as light. The reduplication in Sang Sang may correspond to the repetition in Gada Gada from Sanskrit. Masatoshi Ueki proposed splitting Gada Gada into Gada and Gada, which both mean clear or distinct in Sanskrit. However, Gada Gada is not a compound word in Sanskrit, as compounds require 2 or more nouns, which does not apply here. I have a conclusion here. The Tibetan translation appears to be a mistranslation of the Sanskrit Gada Gada. Different Chinese translations of the Bodhisattva's name is following. In Zheng Fa Hua Jing is melodious roar. In Miao Fa Liang Hua Jing and Tianpi Miao Fa Liang Hua Jing, melodious sound is seen. Possible reasons for these variations. 1. Phonic influence. Chinese translators may have linked it to Gada Gada, a Sanskrit term for a thunderous or drum-like sound, and interpreted it as a melodious sound or melodious roar. 2. Semantic association. They might have associated it with Gada, which means to speak clearly in Sanskrit, leading to the translation as melodious sound. However, Gada Gada and Gada are semantically opposite, so this explanation is problematic. 3. Compound translation strategy. The Zheng Fa Hua Jing's melodious roar merges both melodious and roar, giving awe-inspiring its magnificent qualities to the translation. 4. Alternative Sanskrit source hypothesis. The translator Zhu Fa Hu might have encountered the nada roaring sound instead of Gada Gada, leading to its association with Sinha-nada. A common metaphor for Bodhisattva's preaching, this could explain why melodious roar was chosen instead of a literal translation of stammering sound. 4. Interpretations of the Bodhisattva's name, melodious sound, in commentaries on the Miao Fa Liang Hua Jing. The Lotus Sutra's cult in Asia, in East Asia, is deeply rooted in Kumar Jiva's Miao Fa Liang Hua Jing, making it highly influential in Chinese and Japanese Buddhism. Numerous logical and systematic commentaries on the Miao Fa Liang Hua Jing have been produced, spanning from Jizang to Xu Changzhi. Interpretations of the term melodious sound in the Miao Fa Liang Hua Jing can be categorized into 4 perspectives. I give you this summary for those perspectives. 1. Karmic cause and effect. It suggests a direct causal link between past meritorious acts and the Bodhisattva's melodious sound. However, it only allows for the name meaning melodious sound, excluding the possibility of a stammering sound interpretation. Perspectives 2 and 3 is same. Skillful means and manifestations. It allows for both melodious and non-melodious sound, implying that the Bodhisattva could naturally have a stammering sound but manifest a melodious sound when teaching. These interpretations provide a more flexible understanding of the name Gada-Gada-Swara. Perspective 4, symbolic and aesthetic meaning. It expands a melodious sound beyond literal interpretations, considering all voices, including stammering, as part of the universal truth. It suggests that Gada-Gada-Swara's name contains a deliberate double meaning. I skip those and into this chapter 5. Interpretations of the Bodhisattva's name Gada-Gada-Swara in Sanskrit texts. The manuscripts of Saddharma Pundarika Sutra all consistently record the Bodhisattva's name as Gada-Gada-Swara. Research by Masanobu Ueda and Kazuyoshi Horita confirms that Gada-Gada is a formal Sanskrit term, not a vernacular expression. Phonetic transformation rule, Prakrita Krakasa to 13. In vernacular evolution, Sanskrit gada gada, stammering sound, transforms into gada gada, thunderous, drum-like sound, or gada, pleasure sound in Pali. My conclusion is here. This disproves G.S. Honda's claim that gada gada originated as a vernacular corruption of gada gada. Instead, gada gada and gada derive from gada gada. 2. Lexical dictionary. I can see Vachas Patyam dictionary and Shabda Karpa Duruma. First of all, Vachas Patyam dictionary defines gada gada as vak skalana, stammering speech, and avyakata sputa shabda, unclear and indistinct sound. Shabda Karpa Duruma describes gada gada as lupta pada vyanjana abhidayi, a person who speaks unclear or haltingly, indicating that gada gada refers to both a stammering speech and a stammerer. Etymology. Sanskrit grammar Mahabhashya explains gada gada derives directly from gada gadayati, to stammer. Contextual usage. Joy-related contexts. In the Brahmanda Purana, gada gada swara appears in a state of overwhelming joy. Fear-related context. In Dasya Kumara Charita, gada gada swara describes a trembling, fearful voice. On the other hand, in Buddhist Sanskrit text, I can see Shravaka Bhumi contrasts Gada Gada Swara non-stammering speech with Gada Gada Swara stammering speech in defining a fearless speaker. Dissemination by stammering sounders versus melodious sounders. Can a stammering sounder effectively preach the sutra? Objection. A preacher should have a melodious sound to teach before audience, while stammerers may struggle. But I have a counter-argument. Both melodious and stammering sounders can disseminate the sutra. Their method differ, but serve the same mission. The preacher chapter, the chapter of the Sadharma-Pundalika, aligns with Madhyanta, Vibhaka, Karika, tenfold Dharma conduct. There are two types of offerings in doctrine's dissemination. The one is material offerings. The two is Dharma offerings. Role of different preachers, melodious sounders, strong in oral dissemination, fulfilling both self-benefiting and altruistic dissemination. Stammering sounders is limited in verbal dissemination, but can contribute through writing or alternative forms of Dharma offerings. My conclusion here is that the Sadharma Pundalika Sutra promotes universal inclusivity, ensuring even those with speech uncomfortable person, they also can participate in its dissemination. Here I have this intention in this Sadharma Pundalika Sutra. 1. Social and linguistic duality of Gada Gada Swara. In formal Sanskrit, always used by upper caste Brahmins and Kshatriyas, Gada Gada Swara means stammering sound, indicating a voice that trembles and struggles to articulate. In vernacular dialect spoken by middle and lower caste, Gada Gada transformed into Gada Gada melodious sound, symbolizing a clear and beautiful voice for preaching. 2. Hypothesis. The Bodhisattva as a bridge between social classes. This linguistic transformation suggests that Bodhisattva Gada Gada Swara may have been designed as a symbolic figure for middle and lower caste Buddhists. The dual meaning, stammering and melodious, serves as a bridge between social classes, ensuring accessibility of the doctrine to all. Implication is here. The Sadharma Pundalika Sutra embraces social equality, offering compassion and dignity to marginalized groups through this deliberate double meaning. 6. Conclusion. Key conclusion is here. 1. The name Gada-Gada-Swara encompasses the dual possibilities of stammering sound in Sanskrit and melodious sound in vernacular usage, each supported by linguistic and textual evidence. This duality might have been intentionally designed to appeal to individuals of all social strata, with the vernacular interpretation of melodious sound especially targeting lower and middle classes, thereby reflecting the Sadharma Pundarika's inclusiveness in salvation and dissemination. 2. The Bodhisattva Gada-Gada-Swara, whether manifesting as melodious sound or stammering sound, fulfills the role of Bodhisattva preacher capable of disseminating the Sadharma Pundarika Sutra without contradicting its doctrinal content. The final 8 chapters of the Sadharma Pundarika Sutra collectively promote the idea of universal Buddhahood through stories of bodhisattvas such as Gada-Gada-Swara, aiming to create a Buddha land from Bharat to all world grounded in the Sadharma Pundarika Sutra. I think that this study provided a new perspective and methodology for understanding the non-discriminatory bodhisattva's practice of the Sadharma Pundarika Sutra. Thank you for your listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact with my email. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for highlighting various perspectives and dimensions of Gada-Gada-Swara. We'll come back to you if there is any question at the end of the session. Let us now start of the last presenter. She is Miss Sumanya Kashyap. She is from Delhi. Are you there? Sumanya Kashyap, are you present?
We don't
think
see
she is
her
not.
name in the list, panel list.
Yeah, her name is there. Her name is there, but she is not present, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. So she is not around. We have some 10 minutes to have some discussion, and we had a very interesting papers. 5 presenters from various parts of the world, including one from India and Pakistan, Japan, and England, and also from Slovenia. So now floor is open for a platform is open for any query, question. If any of the participant who is around may ask question, and kindly identify yourself and also to whom you are asking question or any observation.
So, Mr. Kumar, can I ask you a question? Since nobody else is asking. Yeah. So my question to you is that this is, I mean, I didn't manage to thank you earlier. So thank you for this conference. I think it has been a wonderful opportunity. And I'm so happy to connect with all the people. I just wanted to know that is there something that you're looking at forward with this conference? How you're taking it forward? Because you did mention in an email that there might be some publication or something.
Actually, ma'am, I am also one of the. I am not that Pranav Kumar. Means you are just asking. He is organizer is located in Delhi, JNU. I am from Central University of South Bihar, Gaya. But I'll communicate your question to him. I think he'll get back to you.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Any another question? If someone has any query, anything, because we had some very interesting